Anytime you have leading figures who are engaged in behavior that is sad and troubling and hypocritical, other people are going to look at that and say, they don't walk the walk. And so the words and the actions don't ring true. But it's a sad and troubling situation with Jenny and Mark Sanford. I know them. I'm proud of Jenny for her strength and her commitment to her family and keeping that family together. And frankly, I was glad to see her not standing at the press conference like many others have and kind of charting her own path, saying, look, I'm willing to forgive him, but I'm not going to stand there and condone this in any way. But it certainly hurts the brand. It's hard to quantify it.
Okay, we'll talk more about that. Here with us now, former Republican New York City mayor and former presidential candidate Rudy Giuliani. Thanks for coming in.
Oh, thank you, Mika.
Two things to talk about, Mark Sanford as well as Bernie Madoff. We'll start with Sanford. I want to show you Mitt Romney, who I thought gave a really good assessment of where maybe the Republicans should stand on this and where it goes from here, and then I want you to add to it. Here's Mitt Romney on Meet the Press.
Seeing this family become healed is our highest priority. At the same time, and not commenting on particularly on Governor Sanford, but as you look at this setting, and we've seen it time and again on both sides of the aisle, I think you have to recognize that people that are in public life ought to be held to a higher standard. When I heard a former governor say, well, everybody makes mistakes. Well, that's true, but not all mistakes are the same. And not everybody is a governor or a senator or a president.
Okay, I guess first of all, there's the New York Times called for Sanford's resignation.
Right.
Given the aspects that I think are worth covering, the news value aspects, whether or not state money was used, whether or not he disappeared and you could not be in touch with him, and perhaps that impacted the state and how it functioned, should he resign?
That's really up to him, and it's up to the state and how they want to deal with it. I mean, let's look at Bill Clinton.
Yeah.
Should Bill Clinton have resigned? He lied. He lied under oath. He perpetrated that story for about 4 or 5 months and attacked the woman who was the person who made the allegation against him. It was kind of a really vicious attack on her, and then she ended up telling the truth. And most people felt that I felt he didn't have to resign at that time. These are things that I think we're going to lose all kinds of public officials if we start getting involved.
Hold on, though. I don't disagree with you about Bill Clinton at all. And I so hesitate to go into the personal aspects of this. Right. But in terms of the questions being raised, let me put it this way. Is it a question whether or not he should resign?
Of course. Yeah. Number one, it is a question. Everyone's asking it. Number two, it will always be a question when things like this happen. We have, and I don't want to mention all the names because you revive. I can give you a big list of Republicans, a big list of Democrats.
Issues like this have come up. No argument here.
Some of them have gone on after something like this to have great careers. Some have resigned. I think this is an individual question. A lot of it's going to be determined by what happens between him and his wife, and do they resolve it? Do they get it together? Let's see.
Why does that matter? I heard Lindsey Graham saying that on Meet the Press yesterday. Why does that matter? I think the question is, and the only question that's really our business, is whether or not the state was put in any jeopardy, and whether or not he lied in a way that was to a negative effect on the state of South Carolina.
That's up to South Carolina, isn't it? It really isn't us. It's the citizens of South Carolina. He doesn't represent us.
But as a Republican,
I think
as someone who ran the biggest city in the world,
I think this is not a Republican or Democratic issue. I think this is an issue that affects both political parties. We have an equal number of people who get into trouble. For every Republican, we could name a Democrat who has the same kind of trouble. I mean, this is something that the state of South Carolina has to look at and decide.
You know what's kind of interesting when you think about it? I mean, for months now, we have heard and read and seen business leaders in this country, financial services leaders, people who've made money, being battered in the public prints. And yet, when a public figure like Governor Mark Sanford gets involved in what he got involved in, should he resign, should he not resign? In business, New York Stock Exchange companies listed on the New York Stock Exchange, you'd be gone in a nanosecond. In a nanosecond, your board would get you out of there.
Right. Well, you know, it also depends on performance, doesn't it? A lot of people have been gone in business because of bad performance. If somebody was performing really, really well in business, He wouldn't be gone in a nanosecond. That would not be the case.
I don't know.
Well,
that would not be the case. I don't want to mention names, but I can think of 3 examples that had problems more serious than this. But the stock was doing real great. The stock was doing real great. Even baseball players. There was a famous baseball player who got caught with cocaine here in New York about 15 years ago. And I knew it was going to happen. He came out, the first day he came out to play, big applause. I said, if that guy was batting 240, he'd have been gone.
Right or wrong, that's the truth.
Right or wrong, performance has a lot to do with it.
So there may be a double standard with performance, but as far as politicians go, I mean, it's always just a question of degree, which is there's infidelity, then there's lying, then there's taking state money, then there's not being available when the cell phone rings. So it's always a case-by-case thing, right?
Yeah, it's always going to involve a bunch of things like that. And then the question becomes, how serious is it? How good a job is he or she doing?
Performance matters.
Of course it matters. Performance does matter.
Performance matters whether or not
it's a scale,
when you get in trouble like this.
It's a scale.
Right.
If you're very unpopular already, this is probably going to be the end.
Is that right?
I don't know if it's right. Yeah. It's just the reality of it, isn't it?
Yes.
And also the conduct we're dealing with goes back about 10,000 years.
Or more.
And we've got to deal with it, and we've got to deal with it in a way that uplifts people, but at the same time, we've got to be realistic.